Welcome members. Today we're going to officially start the ATS24 process. In our prior episode we looked at the criticality of having long-term data sets, and I showed you how we create those long-term data sets by appending data that appending data from our long-term data sets that we've got in the forum. Now, once that's been complete across all of the instruments that you want to test through the ATS24 process, it's then time to start the ATS24 process. So the first step is to get the algorithms from ATS24, the workflow process, loaded into MetaTrader. And the way we do that is we go to the forum, which I'll just bring up on the screen here. And in the forum, you come down to this section called Workflow Processes, Trend Following and Momentum Models, and you see this post here, ATS24 has arrived. We click on this and we go to the very first post of this series. The way to do that is click on this page number here, go to page 1, and the very first post always contains the latest algorithms, the latest versions of the algorithms we use for the process. And here we've got an instruction manual in PDF format that Fred prepared, which for those familiar with this process, it's very handy to use. It's got all of the key information to run this entire ATS24 workflow process. These videos have been used to give a bit of extra information along the way and also to resolve any queries that members may have in reading that PDF. The other file here is what we call the ATS24 zip file, and this always contains our latest versions of our workflow process. So we first download that by clicking on it and then going to our download section of our file directory, and then where we put we extract those files, as you'll be familiar with now. We extract those files, and I'll show you where you extract them into. So when we're back in a MetaTrader installation, where we extract those files to and we copy and paste those files, we go to File, Open Data Folder. This brings up our MetaTrader installation and all associated files. We come in here to MQL4, and we come into here this folder called Experts. Now what I've done here is, just for ease of identifying all of the workflow processes associated with ATS24, I've created a subfolder called ATS24 in this Experts directory, and within that folder are all of the algorithms that we paste from our forum, and that they are the uncompiled versions of the algorithms. So once it's been pasted into here, all we have to do is come back to our MetaTrader installation, go into the Navigator menu. Now, if the Navigator menu isn't up on your screen, go to View and select Navigator from the options, and that'll bring up the Navigator menu. When we're in the Navigator menu, you right-click and you press Refresh. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to compile all of those algorithms so they're ready to use for MT4. Now that we've compiled all the algorithms and we're ready to go, we can start commencing the ATS24 process. So the first step is creating this symbol list, and we're using those two algorithms, the very first two algorithms, to do so. Let's have a look at those two algorithms. So the first two that you'll be able to see using your drop down in your strategy tester are these two algorithms here. The ATS24 create bat file.ex4 and the ATS24 create symbols list ex4. Both these algorithms are used to create the symbol list, which is used by the entire workflow process over the course of the entire process itself. So once this symbol list has been created, the workflow process refers to this symbol list at all steps in the process going forward from this point in time. So let's now set up the properties for the first algorithm, the bat file algorithm, the very first one. What we do is we select that algorithm here, and we don't adjust any of the information on the screen here, and we just make sure that the optimization is turned off. Then go to Expert Properties. The first thing we do is in the testing properties, we select $1 million. So for the first few steps of the workflow process, we use a hypothetical amount of $1 million. But as we get towards the end of the process, we use more realistic settings applicable to how much we wish to trade our portfolios with. But in the early stages of the process, just set it for $1 million, set it for USD, long and short, and balance. Make sure that the genetic algorithm is not turned on, so it's left unticked. Then we go to the input section. Here, we need to type in our account login. That's the account login that each one of us has for our MetaTrader installation. It might be a 6-digit number or so. We also enter the account password. That is the account password for our broker. So what this therefore does is it allows the algorithm to therefore open and shut MT4, and in each time it opens MT4, it needs to look to the account login and the account password to be able to open it and make it executable. So we need to put the account login in this area here, the password in this area here, the account server that your MT4 installation is working from. In this case, it's Pepperstone, my broker, and it's a Pepperstone demo account. I'm testing it through. And in this section here, if you are running this installation in portable mode, most of us don't, but if you are using portable mode, you've got the ability to set this to true to allow it to run in portable mode. However, for the purposes of most of us, we'll be setting this to false. Once all of that information is set up, we go to the optimization. We don't touch anything in this optimization settings here. So once the inputs have been set up correctly and the testing criteria has been set up correctly, the next step is go to the input screen and you want to save this as a set file. So once we save it as a set file, when we do future workflow processes, we just can refer to that set file, open it, and it will automatically input all of the settings into the parameters of our expert properties. It's a very handy feature to always use set files. So in this instance, I would save, and you'll notice that I save all my set files in this location here, and this would be saved as the ATS24 create batfile.set. And this therefore allows me, when I go into it the next time to do this workflow process, when I bring up that set file, it will automatically establish all of the parameters that are previously used for this workflow process. So once that's been done for the first algorithm here, we also need to look at the properties of the second algorithm. Now, we therefore select this second algorithm, which is the number 2, the ATS24 create symbols list.ex4. Once that's selected, once again, we make sure optimization is off here and we go into expert properties. Now, what this does is in our testing criteria, set it for $1 million USD, all of these settings, make sure genetic algorithm is turned off. Also in the input screen, now this is important. So when we create our symbols list, it assigns a hypothetical spread to all of our symbols that is used for the entire workflow process going forward. So what we do here is the ability to use a multiplier if we want to put in more conservative spreads than what our broker is currently representing for those markets. So in this instance, I use a spread multiplier here of 2 in this value here. Now, what this does is it therefore says, look to the current spreads of those particular markets that we're trading in our symbols list and multiply those spreads by 2. It therefore creates a significant conservative element into our costings for our workflow process. And in this case, it will multiply all of the current spreads at a particular point in time that we're doing this process, creating this symbols list. It'll be using those current spreads at that point in time, which means do not do this process of setting up the symbols list over the weekend. Make sure you do it over your typical trading sessions, because over the weekend, brokers tend to adjust their spreads, and they're often quite unrealistic. But during trading sessions, that's the time to be actually creating this symbol list. Hope that makes sense. So by setting 2 here, that means that it's going to be looking to the current spreads of my universe over here in this section here, and it's going to be multiplying them by 2 and creating this symbols list as a CSV format for each of those instruments. Now that's done, you've set up the properties for, and now what we want to do, like previously, we want to save this as a set file as well. So we go save, and we create it as the number 2 ATS24 create symbol list.set. We create this set file so we can refer to it in our future work processes and immediately install it. So now that's all done. We've set up the properties of both those 2 algorithms. We're now ready to commence the process. So we go to the very first algorithm, the create bat file algorithm. Now, we're ready to press the start button after having set up all of the expert properties. But before I do, I just want to show you what to expect from this process and where the files generated from this process are located. So when we run this algorithm, it creates a new directory in our tester directory called the ATS symbol list. And I'll show you where that's going to be found. If we go File, Open Data Folder, go to Tester, go to Files. Now in here, we're going to find that there's a new folder that is created called ATS symbol list. And in there, we're going to have a number of files generated from this process. So let's go back and start that process. So here we're ready to go. We now press start. It's a very quick process. It should take only a few seconds, but this now should have created files which are now used to create a further process to generate the symbol list. And I'll have a look now at that tester directory. File, Open Data Folder, Tester, Files. You'll see now there's a directory created called ATS24_sim. That's going to be where our symbol list is created. And if we open that directory, we'll see a number of text files for all of the symbols that we'll be generating a symbol list for with our workflow process. Now there's also a file here which is a text file which needs to be converted into a bat file to run the process. So I'll just find where that file is. Here we go, atssimbat.txt. Once we've found this file, we now want to change this extension to the bat extension. And the way we do that is just click on it once and go to the text overwrite function and type BAT. Now select out of here, and it's going to ask you if you change a file name extension, the file might become unusable. Are you sure you wish to change it? We go yes. So now it's changed that what was a text file into a bat file. Now we're ready to run this batch process, which is going to be opening and closing MetaTrader and referring to the particular markets and their spreads, multiplying it by our spread multiplier and generating a CSV file. So, but before we do, we've got to make sure we close MetaTrader. So go to where your MetaTrader is and make sure it is closed. So now it has been closed, we're ready to run this process. So go to the bat file with the right-hand mouse, click on it. Then you wish to select Run as Administrator. Then a message is going to come up. Do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? We go yes. Now what you'll see is a DOS prompt coming up, which is now opening and closing MetaTrader. This particular process is operating outside MT4, but you can see how it's stepping through the markets individually, one at a time, opening up our MetaTrader installation and then closing it again. You let this process run until its conclusion. So obviously, if you're testing a universe of, say, 66 markets, it's going to take 66 times to open and close your MetaTrader installation before that symbol list is generated. But here you can see the process in action, and you can see what to expect when you run this process. So what you'll notice if you just sit back and watch what's happening here, as it's stepping through, that listing, that text file listing and that symbol list is progressively reducing in number as each of those processes are being undertaken for each of the symbols. So at the end of this process, all of those text files should disappear, and you should also have a CSV file generated called the symbol list, which is used for our workflow process. So I'll let this run through and return to you once this process has been completed. So here we are. I've gone away, had a cup of coffee. It's probably taken about 5 to 10 minutes to run the process. And when I arrive back at my computer, I notice that my MetaTrader installation is closed, and the screen that's presented is the directory for the tester files. Now, previously in this particular directory, we had all of those text files. They've now been all processed and they've now disappeared. So there's only 2 files remaining in this symbol directory, and that's the BAT file that was used to run the process, and we've got a CSV output file. What I do is once I've conducted this process, I now delete that BAT file, and I just leave the CSV file in this directory. So let's just go to the directory slightly higher than it. You'll notice now it's created this subdirectory called ATS24 sim, and in there is this CSV file. So let's open up this CSV file. So here we go. You'll notice that all of the markets in my universe that I wanted to test for this workflow process are now specified here using the correct broker nomenclature, the broker's name for these particular markets. This is important because once we've generated this workflow process, we want to take our algorithms into the live or demo trading environment, and we need to ensure that they're using the correct names assigned by the broker so I can identify the markets that we wish to trade. So in the first column, we've got the market name. In the second column, we've got the spread. Now, if you remember, we applied a 2-time spread in our process. So AUD CAD at the time of running this process had a spread of 10 points, and now it's showing as 20 here, 2 times that spread. All of these have been adjusted for 2 times the current spread at the time of undertaking this process. Some of them are very large. Palladium, for instance, is showing with a 2-time spread. It's 5,734 points. I've actually been undertaking this on the weekend, even though I shouldn't be. We should be only doing this during trading hours, but that is significantly too excessive for my processes. So I need to wind that back a bit, and I'll show you how we do that. You'll also notice things like Bitcoin, 5,000 point spread. Well, that's double the current spread over the weekend here. That's still far too high. However, a lot of these I'm quite comfortable with. So we've also got this column here, which shows you looking at the data history for each of these markets. It's now gone to the data history and seen what is the earliest possible date of that data history. That's very important to tell us the range of this data when we're reviewing and amending this symbol list. So the process has generated this listing. Now it's up to us to adjust this using a bit of common logic. So as I'm stepping through here, I'm quite happy with most of these numbers, except AUD Singapore dollar, I think is too high with the double spread here. I'm going to reduce that to 70. There's a bit of discretion involved here, but what you could do is say for the spreads that exceed 100 points in value, perhaps we only use a 1.7 multiplier, 1.2 multiplier, and then apply that standardly across the board. However, what I do is I just make sure that I'm comfortable that the spreads here represent a conservative number to apply to my workflow process. And it's also good because what it does is it provides an allowance for slippage as well. So if I'm using generally double a spread, that therefore means it's using spread that I recognize over the course of time is going to vary, but having double the amount is more than enough to compensate for the variances with the broker over the course of time, but also it allows for a slippage contingency in there. So as I'm scrolling down, the GBP New Zealand, I might make 75 points. The Mexican peso, that's far too high at double a spread here. I'm going to reduce that to say 900 points. The Bitcoin, I'm going to reduce, well, I know I can get that at 1600 during trading hours, so I'm going to reduce that to say 2500 to provide an allowance and slippage factor, etc., etc., etc. as you go through this list. Make these adjustments on this list. By making these adjustments, when we close this file and save it, the workflow process is going to continue to use this file for all of the processes. It won't subsequently be looking at what the broker's using currently for the stage in the process. It's actually going to be using this file here to look at it. So all you've got to do is make sure there are no errors in this file. Make sure that the number of instruments down here is equivalent to the number of instruments you want from your universe. In this case, I've got 67 instruments. That's how many I defined in my universe. I'm happy, and I've noticed that there's no clear errors in any of that information. I'm happy with these spreads. I need to adjust this one down. I'll make that to 200, etc. And some of these other ones I'd adjust as well, these higher spreads up here. However, just for the purposes of showing you what I do, this is how I do it. Once that's done, you then close this, save it, and there it is. It's sitting there in that directory, and this is the end of this first step of the process. It's created a symbol list, which will be used by the workflow process. Now, what happens if you make an error, or you want to amend, or you want to adjust this process? What you typically do is, with that symbol list, if, for instance, I said to myself, right, I've just now done a symbol list that I'm happy with, but I want to do another run with a new symbol list, or I want to delete this symbol list. In that case, what you do is you could, for instance, save this somewhere else on your computer and label it so you can refer to it later. Or if you wanted to run the entire process again, you'd simply come to this directory here, ATS symbol list directory, delete that directory, and then go back into the MetaTrader and start the process step 1 and step 2 again, and it's going to regenerate a new symbol list. We can modify our CSV files, as I've showed you, and if there's an error in the process, we can delete the directory here and then run the process again to see if that fixes the error. So I think that's all the steps in this particular process. So thanks for watching, and I'm looking forward to getting into the next steps in the process in later videos. So have a great week.